Cake Show edition of Bumper to Bumper. Guards in for Dan the next couple of days. Dan will be back on Thursday. We are here until 6:15 tonight because we've got Vikings programming to get in. And then the Minnesota Wild back in action against the Washington Capitals. Game 2 of the Quinn Hughes era tonight at Grand Casino Arena. To help us with that, my buddy Kevin Gaard is going to join right around 4:30. He's on the guest lineup today. Mace in Your Face will join at 5 o'clock. He needed to switch from Wednesday to Tuesday. Works out well for me. There's a ton of stuff I want to get into with Mace. He was in studio last week when the Sharon Moore, Michigan meltdown happened and first broke. So I know there was some instant reaction from Mace there. Now there's a lot more to the story and the story after the story. Who replaces Sharon Moore at Michigan? There's a lot to get into there. And I'm looking forward, as a guy who's been through a coaching search or two, when he was the coach, what's going on right now in places like Arizona State? What's going on right now in Alabama or Washington or Dinkytown in terms of jostling for the next Michigan head coaching job? Mace at 5 o'clock, and Kevin Seifert, because it's Tuesday, he will join right around 3:30, and we believe Mr. Seifert from ESPN is coming in studio. Devin Ward is here with me for the first hour. Kara Savage will check in right around 4. The Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line, as always, is 64686. You can text anything and anything at any time. Also hit me at Guardsy on social media. Twitter's good. Instagram's good. It's all there for you. Want to start, though, with a little bit of breaking news or speculation, at least a development in the Twins ownership story. Aaron Gleeman tweeted it out. He had some work to do with Dan Hayes, his partner at The Athletic today. We're finally getting a little bit more information about the minority owners, the ones we've been waiting for since the day that we learned the Pohlad family was taking the team off the market. These mysterious minority owners apparently are surfacing, and they're apparently close to that partial sale that, in a big sense, will give the team and give the current ownership group a fresh start financially. It's described as, quote, a significant manner in terms of cleaning up the club's finances and could set the stage for a more lucrative deal in the future. And will foreshadow to that a more lucrative sale in the future. The nuts and bolts as we know them, they're selling 20% of the franchise to 3 different minority partnerships groups. The $1.75 billion is the valuation. You may recall that I think it was the Tampa Bay Rays that sold for 1.5. The Twins, I think, could have sold for 1.5. They thought they were worth a little bit more than that, and they had the $500 million in debt that they were trying to work themselves out of, and so they ended up taking it off the market. And it appears that these 3 minority partnership groups are going to help a lot with that. Here's the paragraph. Finalize a transaction that helps a club $500 million in debt return to sound financial footing, while also requiring the addition of 3 seats to the team's ownership advisory board. That according to league sources telling The Athletic. Basically, it appears that the debt appears to be going away. There's no disputing that they have been losing a bunch of money, and it makes sense why, and that's outlined in the story. They have a great season in 2019. Believe that was the Dong Show squad that went into Dongtober that ended up losing to the Yankees, and they never really got a chance to capitalize on that because what happened in 2020? Something called the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, where fans were not allowed to come. They lost a bunch of money. The story outlines how they didn't lay anybody off. They continued to pay minor league players, some things that other organizations did not do that may have contributed to them being in a precarious financial situation. So that's how it all started. But we know why it all continued was, as Rocco Baldelli would say, and said many times,
we know it's not good baseball.
They haven't had very good teams the last couple of years, and people haven't been showing up to Target Field, and the money continued to hemorrhage. But we're learning more about who these people are, and this is where I think it gets interesting because they are described, one of the groups, as New York bankers. Another group is One of Us. They are Minnesota-based. And then there's a third group that apparently is a bunch of different limited partners who just wanted to purchase small chunks of an MLB franchise and were apparently involved in this thing as it was going along the last couple of months. And as I'm reading the story, there's quotes from anonymous sources, and they're obviously twin sources, so they're trying to paint it in the most positive picture as they can, that this is all good news, and this is great, and we're going to be back on strong financial footing, and we're looking at all different avenues now to improve the ball club, and we're looking for fresh ideas. There's another Pohlad who's coming in with Joe. I think it's his older brother, Tom. So now we've got 2 Pohlads that are going to have the seat at the table. And that all sounds good, and it reads rosy, and it probably is good in the grand scheme of things that the team is getting back to somewhat solid financial footing where at least they're not $500 million in debt anymore. But one thing I do know about banks like to make money. And the other thing, I think, to keep banks healthy, one thing they can't do is lose money. And I was texting around today, just different people that are loosely affiliated, sources close to the situation. And I said, does the story you read today, does that leave you more cynical about what's going to happen with the Twins, or does it leave you more optimistic in the short term about what's going to happen with the Twins? And somebody phrased it, I thought, pretty succinctly. And somebody, I thought, made a good point because of who is jumping into the team, bankers, financial people. And we remember the Pohlads got their start as bankers, if you want to go all the way back to Carl. They don't like to lose money. They're not interested in losing money. And this source basically said, I think they're basically just wiping debt off the books, and then they'll run very low payrolls to avoid losing money. And that's my biggest fear, too. We're getting back on secure financial footing, and we're staying there. That's what they're going to try to do here, which means they're not interested in shelling out a bunch of cash right now. They're not interested in shelling out a bunch of cash for the next couple of years. We're going to get through a labor deal that I think is coming up in about 2 seasons. We're going to try to get to the next TV contract phase, which is, I think, 2029. If it's not 29, it's 28. And then we'll see what happens. And that's my biggest fear, and I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. And that should be the fans' biggest fear, too, is that we're getting the cash infusion that we needed to get us back on solid footing. But once we do that, we're not going to be reckless. We're not going to be aggressive. We're not going to do anything that we haven't done the last handful of years. We're going to be remarkably fiscally responsible. The other word for that could be cheap. And I think we've all kind of seen how that story goes. Doesn't mean that they can't win. Just means it's going to be really hard, and they've got to be right on about 9 other things. When you're not willing to invest the financial resources and you're not willing to take the big swings and the big chances, you really have to be right. You've got to be right on your draft picks. You've got to be right on your trades. You've got to be right on your value contracts. You've got to hope that aging veterans that are coming in for one last stab at glory overperform. That was actually part of the 2019 team. You want to talk about Nelson Cruz being a big part of that. And that's where I think it's scary if you're a Twins fan, is once more bankers get involved, and in some cases, I don't know, maybe venture capital people, maybe private equity people, I don't know exactly. When it's just described as New York bankers, that can be very loose interpretation. I think most of us are smart enough to know what that means. Bankers don't like losing money. They want to make money. And when they invest in something at this level, part of the story talked about how the Twins are positioning themselves to be in a good spot when all of these other things happen. The labor deal happens, the TV contracts happen, and they might be in a good spot when they want to sell again. It feels like they're going to hold the asset, keep the asset running cheaply, try not to lose money, and then be much more positioned to sell something when all of that comes to fruition and there's more certainty about the television finances. There's more certainty about possible salary floors, all the revenue sharing stuff that goes into CBAs. That's the scary part. And with pitchers and catchers reporting about 2.5 months from now, that's kind of where I'm left with it. It's good that we've got info about what's going on now. It's good that there's more money coming into the team, but I think the good news kind of stops there. And that's the unfortunate part if you are a baseball fan in this town. They will have to do something remarkably out of character to get me to reverse my thinking on this. And I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be incorrect about my feeling on this, but just feeling about who's involved, what we're learning about it, what the backgrounds of these folks usually are, and how they operate, I don't get a great sense that there's this big light at the end of the tunnel for 2026, maybe not even 2027, and maybe not even 2028. You can hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686 with your reaction there. Like I said, you can hit me at Guardsy on social media, Twitter or Instagram, both work. We've got Kevin Seifert coming up at the bottom of the hour. Don't forget Kevin Gaard about 4:30 to talk about the Quinn Hughes era and a bunch of stuff Minnesota Wild related. Mace will be in my face from 5 to 6 tonight. We're out at 6:15 for Vikings programming, as well as the Wild pregame show with Kevin Fallness coming up at 6:45. When we come back, though, the future of the NBA may have arrived already, and unfortunately, it does not appear to be Anthony Edwards. I'll explain when we come back. Welcome back to the Fan Cake Show edition of Bumper to Bumper. Guards in for Barreiro today. The Tuesday regulars, Kevin Seifert will join in studio about 10 minutes from now. Glenn Mason, a Wednesday regular, will be coming in on a Tuesday. Luigi Lunani is going to join on Thursday this week. We're messing around with the week with everybody's schedules. Kevin Gaard will give us a hockey fix around 4:30. We will talk about the Quinn Hughes era. We will talk about goaltending with the former state championship goaltender from Burnsville, Kevin Gaard, an hour and change from now. There's been kind of a silly debate over the last few years, and it's certainly talkable, and it's something that everybody likes to have an opinion on. When LeBron James and Steph Curry, and who else would be in that mix, Kevin Durant, when they eventually retire, and it's going to be sooner rather than later, certainly with LeBron, who's, I think, in season 22 or 23, something like that, in his near 40s. When they set sail and they head out and they finally call it a career, who's going to be the next face of the NBA? And it's one of those conversations that's fun, pretty harmless, and pretty meaningless at the end of the day, because there's going to be a handful that take it into the next generation. I think that's pretty clear. But a name that comes up all the time is Anthony Edwards, and it makes sense. And certainly in terms of Americans, he's probably the best American-born basketball player right now. When you factor in the last handful of MVPs have all come from somewhere else, whether it's Canada with SGA, Serbia with Jokic. Obviously, Luka's going to be in that mix, Giannis, Greece. It's become a very international game, and everybody's looking for the next great American, and they're looking for the next face of the NBA. And Ant has said, I don't have a lot of interest in that. I don't believe him. I think he wants all the smoke, which is why I love Anthony Edwards. But I think the conversation has been rendered a little bit irrelevant and a little bit moot, because the next face of the NBA, I think, is already here. And he plays tonight in the NBA Cup championship game against the New York Knicks. He plays for the San Antonio Spurs Davy, and his name is Victor Wembanyama. And like the guys I just mentioned, he's not one of us. He's not American. As we know, he's from France. And if you want to further the conversation, when the Olympic Games comes around here in 2028 and goes to Los Angeles, I think France is going to be the favorite to win the gold medal. I think they are loaded for bear, and Wemby's going to be like 22 years old and ready to take over everything. And if you watched the game the other night against the Oklahoma City Thunder, watched how he played, watch how he acted, listen to what he said after the game, Wemby's here. And it's a scary thought to think about, because we've often talked about the Wild's road to a Stanley Cup and what they did this year to shake things up, to compete just in their division. When you think about Colorado and Dallas as two of the best teams in the National Hockey League, the two teams that right now are pretty much dominating the NHL, it's scary to think that you're going to have to go through those teams to try to get where you want to get to, even to get into the second round, the way that the NHL works. I think we've got a similar scary proposition when it comes to the National Basketball Association. We know about the Thunder. They're unbelievable. That was their second loss the other night. They're 24-2. They had a 16-game win streak. They've got a bunch of really good young players. They're going to have to make some financial decisions here in the next couple of years, but they've got like 50 draft picks, including maybe 3 lottery picks in a very loaded 2026, as the experts say, NBA draft class next season. They're going to be a problem essentially for a decade unless a bunch of things go dramatically wrong, and it doesn't appear that there's any indication that's going to happen. I think the Spurs have entered the chat, and I think Wemby has entered it in a big way. And if everyone's being honest, this is happening way sooner than I think anybody thought it would. In his second year, he just missed a bunch of time with an injury, and that is the one asterisk when you talk about a guy who's 7'4", 7'5", whatever he is. big guys, when they get hurt, especially with their feet or their lower body, things can go pear-shaped. But he comes back, only plays 21 minutes. But if you watched it, he was essentially the reason that they won the game after hanging with OKC for the entire fourth quarter. He hits the big shot over Caruso, talks a ton of you-know-what to him, and then continued the conversation after. And I loved it for a bunch of reasons. Everybody knows how I feel about the Thunder. If you don't, you can just podcast one of the shows from last week where Dan and I argued about it. I respect big time how they go about their business every single night. You never have to question effort. You never hear them say things that you've heard the Wolves say. We just don't want to play these games, like Ant said. We just want to fast forward to the postseason and see what happens there. It's like we don't realize we need to show up every night. The Thunder don't have to worry about that. And SGA, to his credit, kind of leads that charge and says, I'm not thinking about beating the Warriors record or the Bulls record or setting the record for wins, whatever it is. I'm not even thinking about winning a second championship. I'm worried about the next game. That is all commendable. I respect the hell out of them for all of that. But I don't like how they play. And what I love about Wembanyama is not only is it obvious he doesn't like how they play, like a lot of players don't, and a lot of teams don't, Wolves included, but he said something about it. And he was pretty frontal about it. And I know Jalen Williams from the Thunder thought he was being a little subliminal. I don't think so. When he says after the game, we're about to embark on something that's pure and great, and he calls it ethical basketball, I could have kissed him. It was great. And not just because I agree with him on whatever he thinks about the Thunder. I like the fact that he's not backing down from the smoke. I like the fact that he's running into the fire, because I do think there is a little bit of a resignation, and some of it might be exasperation with how the Thunder seem to get to play the way that they play, with the fouling all the time, and then we know about the SGA stuff. And I'm sure that gets frustrating. We can see it on the Timberwolves when they play the Thunder, and the Thunder are going to be here on Friday night, 8:30. It's frustrating, and I'm guessing at times it's annoying. And I love that Wembanyama is here for all of it. And he was asked about it again today to kind of clarify the ethical basketball statement. And he did back off a little bit and tried to make it a little bit more about how the Spurs play in terms of moving the ball and less isolation and everything that comes with that. But so I'm a little disappointed in Wemby that way. But I love the fact that he's going after him and he's not backing down. And it's clear he has no respect for Chet Holmgren, the local kid, has no respect for him as a guy. The way that he sent the shot back, the way that he screamed when Holmgren missed a free throw. I think this is going to be something really fascinating to watch. And as a Wolves fan, it's scary because they have a lot of the same attributes as Oklahoma City when you think about young players, assets, draft picks. Castle's obviously very good. Dylan Harper, a lottery pick, very good. They made the trade for the guard that I coveted probably more than anybody, De'Aaron Fox, a year ago. I love De'Aaron Fox. He's fitting in beautifully on that team. It's a scary proposition when you're trying to figure out how your team is going to beat that team for potential championships down the road. And as much as I love what the Wolves have done the last few years, they're going to have to come to a reckoning with that. And what's going to be fascinating is, does Tim Conley go Tim Conley on it and make another big swing here at some point, whether it's this year or in the very near future, because these guys are only beginning and Wembanyama is only beginning. And for the Timberwolves, for USA basketball, when you think about the Olympics, it's a pretty scary situation. But in terms of the Oklahoma City stuff, I love it. I love that he's all about that. I love that he was going after those guys. I love that he wasn't backing down on the court, off the court. I love all of it. And I would, if I'm picking the NBA Cup tonight, I'm picking the Spurs over the Knicks, a game which you can watch on Amazon Prime. Should be cool. Hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686 on that. Also tweet me at Guardsy. When we come back, we'll shift to Vikings. Kevin Seifert will join. Among the topics for him, is there a JJ and KOC schism? And do they have a decision to make at wide receiver that we may never have seen coming? All of that with Seifert when we continue. Tuesday, right around 3:30, bumper to bumper. Gaardsy in for Barreiro. Why does the time matter? Because it's Kevin Seifert time. Around 3:30, sometimes 4. ESPN's own joins us, usually in studio. I don't shame you if you don't come in studio like the regular host does. I understand you have other obligations, but I appreciate that you came in.
Oh, anything for you, and happy to do it. There's some people that I won't make the effort that I made today for it.
No Snownomi today to deal with.
No Snownomi, no late access schedule at the Vikings, so happy to be here.
Do you have empathy for high school concession stand workers now that you've been through the meat grinder at our local high school's varsity game? When was that? Last Thursday night?
Yes, I've done those before, but I think maybe the game was not quite as competitive. So especially a lot of the kids were looking for other things to do that otherwise would have been enraptured by the game.
Yeah, and
so we had a steady flow, and I may or may not have been dripping with sweat by the end of it.
Can confirm.
Yes,
you needed a recovery period.
Your poor daughter came asking for popcorn, and we weren't able. We were running the popcorn machine the entire time, and we could never keep up with all the popcorn requests. It's good popcorn.
It's great popcorn. I was bitter you're out of pretzels.
Yes,
I love.
There's a limited supply. Get there early for the pretzels for the people who are listening.
Well, you're right. We were hanging on for dear life. All of our kids were in the back gym playing.
You can do that too.
We just threw them in the back gym, and then Jillian wanted some popcorn, so we went and got popcorn. Did you guys notice that I spilled the nacho cheese all over the front counter, or did I do a good job of cleaning that up? Immediately upon getting the nachos, I pure progressioned my way from pretzel to nachos.
Well, you were probably the oldest person that came up to the concession stand over the course of that 2 hours. So we were dealing with a lot of kids that were likely candidates to spill stuff or not make it out of there without some sort of incident. So I didn't notice it was you who had done it.
No. And when I asked you for napkins, that was why.
Well, I thought it was for one of the kids.
No, that was for me. It was for the adult. It was just immediate. And the cheese, nothing better than the nacho cheese.
Did we give you more cheese to replace it? Or
no, because I was embarrassed. I didn't want to ask.
Had plenty of that.
Well, you were laboring back there. I didn't want to have to come back to me. You were laboring for the long line. I didn't want to have to make an incident out of it.
It would have been bad if we had run out of cheese because you needed a replacement.
Exactly. I feel like I made the mess myself. I shouldn't bother you with it. But thank you for the service. It was great.
Yeah.
You offered her fresh popcorn, said we got a fresh batch coming up. I actually wanted to just get the hell out of there and get back to the game, but she wanted the fresh popcorn.
We took care of it.
Appreciate it. All right. If you have questions for Seifert, Bradshaw and Brian, KFAN text line is 64686. You can tweet me at Gaardsy as well. He'll be hanging out for a while. Kevin Gaard about an hour from now. What has clicked? I call him the young quarterback because that's what Kevin O'Connell calls him. The young quarterback. He's not just a quarterback. He's the young quarterback. JJ McCarthy, 2 games, pretty good performances back to back. What has been the difference?
A couple of things. I think it's only fair to acknowledge the external bit of it, which is I would not say Washington's defense nor the Cowboys' defense have been ranked amongst the top schemes in the NFL. And so if we're gonna note, as we should have, that he played some of his worst games against really good defenses like the Packers and the Falcons earlier this year, then we should acknowledge that when he plays well against a bad defense, that's part of the circumstances. But I do think there's something, he whether it was Kevin O'Connell saying a couple weeks ago, like, let's just drop this whole mechanics conversation.
Thank God.
At least publicly. I think the public part of it, had an impact. I remember asking JJ McCarthy, to what extent has this whole conversation, not held you back, but impacted you? And he said something along the lines of, you're not going to change your swing on the 12th hole of a golf course. And so I took that to mean like, it's like, just got to get through it. And then after the round is over, then you figure out what you need to change in terms of your swing, or you go to the driving range. And so I think there clearly seems to have been an effect, and Kevin O'Connell calls it the quieted mind. But he seems to be playing, like, he just doesn't look like he's as frenetic as he was. He seems to have a lot more fluidity to the basic parts of playing football at that position, the drop back, surveying the field, the actual physical execution of the throw. It just doesn't look as frenetic. And some of it is that he hasn't, he's gotten great pass protection / he hasn't faced a ton of pressure. But even when he wasn't facing pressure in earlier games, he was creating it for himself in some cases. And so, there's all those things. And there's also like the idea that the first 6 starts of your career are probably not going to be the best 6 starts. And that nobody was surprised. I would have been surprised if you told them before the season that the young quarterback would struggle, because young quarterbacks often do. The concern was the degree to which he was struggling, and that it was relatively historic in this era in terms of people in their first 6 starts. And even if he made a big jump, like, would that jump be from historically bad to, still below average? And so he's made a bigger jump in terms of performance than just that. And so that has, I think, reassured at least some people that this isn't going to be like the all-time bust of busts. Right. This isn't a Jamarcus Russell situation that they're dealing with. But, and so I think those are some of the things. I still think that they work on mechanics and they work on technique, but just the public, I think the public focus on it being removed, I think has had some level of effect on JJ's ability to just kind of, run through the offense. People have talked about it being, simplified and they stripped down a bunch of stuff, and they had done that prior to the cessation of. They had? Yeah. Like they had pulled some stuff out, and they were, when they had a lead or were tied, running the ball more than they usually do. And so some of the things that people are picking up on now, I think were underway prior to the start of this. But in a nutshell, in an extended nutshell, I'd say that's what's happened.
Well, when did they start stripping it down?
Oh, I think it started prior to the concussion. The Green Bay game plan was run, and then.
Well, that's still 3 weeks ago. Right?
Yeah.
That's not very long ago.
No, but that was before he started, playing better.
Right.
And so, it's not. I don't think that they got to the Washington game and their game plan for that game was dramatically different than what it was in Green Bay. They had a different opponent, and they had, he had a different offensive line as well. That Ryan Kelly was back, and so he was playing with all 5 of his offensive linemen, and so a combination of things there. But there's no doubt that if you were to compare the offense to what they're trying to do now, and in the heyday of Sam Darnold downfield or Kirk Cousins downfield, it doesn't necessarily compare. But I do think that those changes were underway before the statistical improvement that McCarthy has shown.
I know nobody wants to go back to the international trips, you in particular, and Kevin O'Connell for sure.
I'm thrilled that I went. I'm just glad I'm home.
Yeah, and everybody was it was grating on everybody is what it sounded like at the end. You've talked about that with Dan. But to go back to the rhetoric part of it, I remember listening to that when KOC was talking about what JJ McCarthy was doing on the practice field. I remember going, does that make any sense to anybody? Like that we're really focusing on, like he's about to go play, and you can't be thinking about all these things: base, balance, body, posture, feet and eyes. The analogy, JJ's right, but I guess I'm wondering, why did they think they could do it that way? Because the conversation we're having now, the way I've said it is, I wish we were having this conversation when it was 75 degrees and sunny, not just because it's cold in Minnesota now, but it means it's like August or September, and there's still a season to potentially build upon.
Yeah, I don't think, you said it was during the international games that you started noticing and picking up on him talking about it. That's not when they started focusing on it, though. Like, it had been a focus, the whole offseason, and maybe even going back to before his knee injury last summer, into the spring, through training camp. And I think there was probably some, acknowledgement / frustration / observation that it hadn't really stuck. And so, I don't know if they anticipated it would be as difficult of a job as it turned out to be. Like, people are think that you can't change a guy's mechanics. Well, it happens pretty frequently on some level. Like, you've seen guys like Aaron, go look at the way Aaron Rodgers threw the ball at Cal and watch how he throws it now. Like, maybe that was part him, maybe that was Mike McCarthy when he first got there, but his throwing motion, for example, and this is not even what we're talking about with JJ in terms of his mechanics, but but it's not uncommon at the NFL level for people to change mechanics.
Josh Allen's another example.
Josh Allen's
people
another
frequently
example.
talk about. Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes it's as simple as some teams like when you're in shotgun to have one foot in front of the other. Some say it's put your left foot up and your right foot back. Some want it to be balanced. Tom Brady has talked about these things. So sometimes it's something as small as that, and sometimes it's as big as the position that your shoulders are in, or those other things. And I think what they were identifying was that some throws were not being executed primarily because the combination of mechanics were causing it. And so it was early enough in the season to not just give up on it. I don't know if they anticipated it would not really stick. And so the public part of it probably was, you could maybe conjecture that this was to put him on blast and basically say, I think I talked to Dan about this and say it's not working. You've seen coaches do this before, and I don't know if Kevin O'Connell had, but it's not working privately. So let's see if we can raise the ante and make sure he understands how important this is. It could be, there's lots of different explanations swirling through the NFL why this would come up. I think it was just Kevin O'Connell answering the questions and, going into a fair bit of detail because that's his whole world is the quarterback thing.
And you guys pulled at the thread surgically.
Yeah.
You guys were good about it.
We always play, we play a role and they play a role and it became a conversation the same way that the pure progression stuff became a conversation last week. And I actually like that conversation and I want more of those conversations
it's interesting
it just feels more substantive and more relevant than, the
BMI for the shot that you took at us earlier today.
Yeah. Or who's going to be the MVP or which coach is going to be the first one fired. It's not to say those conversations don't also have a place in this world, but I personally like that. And so why they thought that they could change his mechanics in the middle of the season, I think it was, just continuing a process that began behind the scenes without a lot of public discussion long before that.
How hard in miles per hour does he throw some of these passes? Do we have that analytic? Because there's some high heat being out there, especially when he's feeling it, which I actually think is good. He's got to dial it back, obviously, but I like when he's confident and he's zipping it around.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for that. Ideally, that would manifest when he's confident and excited and competitive. That manifests in just the quickness of getting rid of the ball and the decisiveness. And so there's just some times when, Justin Jefferson is a great receiver. TJ Hawkinson has great hands.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison over the years has had pretty darn good hands. And so when you see them not catch a pass, you can go in one of two directions. Is it because, they lost concentration or their hands aren't as good anymore, or they suddenly forgot how to, the fundamentals of catching a ball, or even though it hit their hands, was there something about the timing of it? Was it thrown before they had a chance to adjust, or is it coming in too hot? That doesn't mean that they still shouldn't catch it at this level, but you have to ask yourself, why are people who don't normally drop passes dropping passes or being unable to come up with them? And, I think some of that is just the speed that he throws the ball at.
All right, so you were in the room. How legit is the schism between KOC and JJ about the gritty?
I don't know, legitimate. I think that O'Connell, and Wes Phillips kind of clarified it today. They're young coaches and they're hip in a lot of ways, but they're still coaches, and so you don't have to even have experienced a moment where a guy spikes a ball before he crosses the goal line, or he's involved in some kind of elaborate, taunt that even doesn't wipe the score off but causes a penalty,
right.
Or they slow down and somebody who runs a 4.1 40 catches up and tackles them before they get to the end zone and they end up with a field goal. So you don't have to experience one of those, what seems like an outlier, but lives on for all time and all the blooper lists and videos that are out there to feel very strongly that start the celebration after you cross the end zone. So I don't think that I don't think it's a schism. I thought the most interesting, because I thought it was a very predictable response from O'Connell and from Wes Phillips. The more interesting part of it, frankly, was that JJ kind of, I asked kind of what I thought was a throwaway question about, did you plan that? Did you, were you gritty and this and that? And he basically said, like, he did it in practice. They told him not to do it, but because of the kind of person he is, that made him more enticed, and he did it anyway, and he'll get a minus. And like, we love honest answers.
That's a great quote. Yes.
We want people to not, go into cliches, and we certainly don't want people to answer in ways that aren't truthful. It was just a surprising thing to reveal.
That I went against what my coaches told me.
And you wondered, like, what, is he just being a goofball, and because he's a goofball and saying that? Or was there like a message being sent? I'm not aware of any like big thing between them, but it was definitely jarring for him to say that. I mean, it's not his first game, and it's not his first post-game interview. Like you could say he's young and you could say he's inexperienced, but when you're the quarterback at Michigan, you're in public a lot. And so I don't think that he has any misunderstanding of what it means when you say things in public. And so it was just surprising. And again, like as just a human being, I prefer people being honest and giving their true answers and not feeling like they have to be guarded about everything they say. It was just an unusually direct response.
I liked how KOC said, I want to see that 40 time he tells us about.
Yeah.
That's like a good, gentle, like KOC scolding, I thought.
Yeah.
And it's the second time he's kind of said, because the 9 stuff irked him, it seemed like, as well, right?
Yeah, he said, and that was with last Tuesday with PA on their YouTube /VEN/KFAN collaboration.
A lot of platforms.
Yes, there are. And he, he left O'Connell left himself, open and said, if the 9 thing really is who you are, then embrace it. But if it's not, and you're just kind of creating a character, basically, let's hold off on that. So, I didn't take that. So it didn't qualify really as a direct shot, and neither did the 40 thing. And that felt like a reference to like almost like an inside joke between them that we're not privileged to. But when a season is like this, a lot of us can sit there and try to pick apart every word and every exchange and wonder if it's what it means and what it doesn't mean. And they're still getting to know each other and still getting to know what their relationship can be and will be. But there's more than just a few sort of breadcrumbs there that suggest that the on-field struggles have not been limited to on-field, and that there's still a lot to be built behind the scenes as well.
This is not recency bias for my question, because I've been a big I still can't call him Speedy because I don't have a good vibe with him. I'm going to call him Jalen Nailor.
Sure.
They can call him Speedy. With the 2 touchdowns from this last Sunday's game against the Cowboys. But part of the reason why Adam Thielen is in Pittsburgh right now playing with Aaron Rodgers is because Jalen Nailor, I think, has emerged as a legit third wide receiver. He's a free agent at the end of the year. I heard Gessling with PA and Nordo today talking about that, and that someone's probably going to come in and pay this guy. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, is there a world, speaking of schisms and things that have happened on and off the field, where they say we like Jalen Nailor more than Jordan Addison long term?
So you're reading my mind.
I'm
going to potentially write about that potentially this
I love
week.
it.
And so you have to tune in. No, I think...
Will you do one of those short videos so I don't have to read it all?
Yeah, 45 seconds is much, a video is much better than a 650-word story in this day and age. But I
think it's a legit conversation.
I think it's a conversation. And there's a lot of tentacles to it, because I think if you only did on field, I think you won't find too many people who would pick Jalen Nailor over Jordan Addison.
I would probably agree.
If we're just talking, it's not an insult to Jalen. Like, Jordan's really, I've said this from the moment he got here. Like, there's another level to him that still really hasn't totally been unlocked. And
that's probably why Nailor's getting opportunities, right? Because you've got Justin, you've got Jordan. So Nailor is, a lot's coming his way probably because of that. I'm not immune to that.
Yeah. And then you get to the off-field and you say, has the off-field for Jordan Addison been troubling, or has it just been weird? And frankly.
How do you decide?
And does it matter? And if there's a difference, does it matter? Because ultimately, what you're worried about is players not being available to you because of NFL policies when you run into off-field trouble. And so I have never, ever sensed that the Vikings were truly concerned about Jordan Addison off the field in ways that would make them alter the way that they think about his future.
Okay.
But his off the field issues maybe would make them a little less hesitant to, on a financial level, like how much do you commit and how much do you wait? They could, he's eligible for a contract extension after the season.
That was my question. I thought so.
So this is year 3. So the first year you can get a deal is after you're done with your third year. And so he could get one now, and you might be able to get a deal, some level of a deal, compared to what Jalen Nailor might get when he's a total free agent on the open market. Or you might just wait and just pay him, pick up his 5th-year option if you want to, and for the next 2 years, just kind of pay him year to year, and then decide after that. And it might cost you more, or your caution might be rewarded in that situation. But I have not sensed that there's a really deep argument in terms of what direction they should go in. It's kind of a bummer because they've not drafted really well.
He's the guy,
and he's
one of them.
One of the people, and of that 2022 draft especially, who has been a hit, and they hit on him. And that to be in a position where your third receiver, and had the quarterback situation been more reliable this year, his numbers would be much, much better. Not that I'm all 22 guy, but you don't have to be an all 22 guy to look at plays from the bigger angle and see how often he's open, frankly. And so, but to have that be a 6th round pick is impressive, and they should be lauded for that as much as we rip them for all the picks that haven't worked out. And so, it's a good conversation. It's a smart conversation. I don't think the answer is like 100% to 0%, but I don't sense that the Vikings have viewed the Jordan Addison off the field issues as being serious enough to fundamentally change the fact that he was their 1st round pick, and he's really good and could continue to pair with, at least for the next 2 years, with Justin. I would be very nervous. When you miss a walkthrough in London, from what I'm told, it was, kind of a hard place to get lost in. You have to work to get away from the team. Yes. Because there was nothing around it. Yeah, that makes me a little bit nervous. But I'll look forward to reading that story. I'm glad that we're on the same page. That makes me feel better that I'm not just thinking about weird things off the top of my head. No, completely legitimate. Because he's had a great season. You think about the 4th down catch he had against Detroit, right? He's obviously had some touchdowns. He doesn't drop many balls. Dating back to last year when Jordan Addison was hurt, he was really good too. I think he's been a really nice find. And like we've seen before, sometimes those are the guys that you lose, and you have to be okay with it. You can't keep everybody, but that'd be a tough one to lose because I think he's been really good. Yeah. Just getting going with Seifert. If you have questions for him, 64686 is the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line. Jonathan Grenard, KOC announced, is out for the year. With his injury, they're going to clean all of that up, and he's going to be shut down for the remaining 3 games, which means it's time for an extended look at Dallas Turner. We'll get Seifert's thoughts on that and much more when we continue.